I also come to the public transport system that are also transporting medicines from one point to the other. You find that, for example, a matatu that is moving from Nairobi to Kakamega or Bungoma, sometimes they buy medicine, where people buy medicine from town, they load them in those matatus. The owner of those matatus should also know that it's a risk to transport medicines without the transporter's license. Remember, the transporter license is not only the license that we want them to have. The conformity of the vessel to transport the medicine is an issue in us. Yes. Okay? Because you cannot transport the vessel, for example, you cannot transport the medicine, for example, in an open, pickup. In such hot areas where the medicine can easily get damaged through the intensive heat and all these kind of things. So we are trying to say those public transport vessels, they are also risking themselves to transport medicines. So is that? Yeah. Good morning. I'm Julius Kaloy. I'm the head of Enforcement and Surveillance, a department that is formally called Good Distribution Practice. And on behalf again of our CEO, Dr. Sioi, friend, and the Director of Health Products and Technologies, Dr. Mohammed Hamed, and on behalf of my colleagues here, and we wish to give a brief on an activity that is ahead of us that we've again started for this week going forward. This is an activity that is touching unauthorized wholesalers of pharmaceuticals products and unlicensed transporters or transportation vessels. Those are the vessels that are used again for transportation of pharmaceutical products. And I'll start with the first item, the enforcement of unauthorized wholesalers. As we touched from the first time, this was not part of our activity. And now we have unfolded this as focus because, again, as we say, that our main area in eradicating illegalities in pharmaceuticals, the wholesalers, both authorized and unauthorized, is our focus. So this week we focus on unauthorized wholesalers, and these are people who are basically doing wholesale without a wholesale dealer's license, and these are engaged into, or they are classified into 3 areas. Our first criteria of these people are people who have a retail license and using it to do the business of wholesaling or distribution. So these are people that we are putting targets. We've always told them to ensure they concentrate on the purposes of the license that is issued. The purpose of retail license is purely to sell medicines to the consumer, the patient, is not to distribute medicines to the other retailers or any person who intends to sell to the consumers. So the license is purely for sale of pharmaceuticals to the consumers, and those are the patient. So the retail license is not purposed to do distribution or purposed to do wholesaling. So in this case, as a focus on that, we have 2 sanctions. One, if we find a retailer who is doing a wholesale practice, the superintendent of that license has to be put on EDC, the disciplinary section of the board, for purposes of malpractice. 2, the premise itself may now also be put on disciplinary and license withdrawn, because the purpose of that license was not meant for distribution, it was meant for retail. The other part of the unauthorized wholesalers are now the people who are using vans to distribute medicines around, and that issue now serves us on 2 major areas. And one major area, it serves now to do a transportation of pharmaceuticals with an unlicensed vessel or transportation vessel, and also now unauthorized wholesale practices. For those vessels, they could be coming from authorized retailers, or probably those are people who are doing an illegal distribution without any form of a license. So we'd also want to request the media and the public, if they find people, we normally call them briefcase people, who purchase medicines, put them in vehicles and start moving around in premises, trying to purport that they're disputing for a certain outlet, where now even those outlets basically does not even exist. So we want it to be noted on the friends in the media, the public, and also our colleagues in the practice, and specifically the professional bodies, to also keep on lookout to check whether there are people who are using vans to distribute medicines from premises that are not registered. You know, people buy medicines from distributors without existing premises, and they put on their vehicles and they start moving around selling those medicines. That is part of our focus. And for this week going forward, we have engaged the police as well. As we are talking, the IG has also given authorization to his county commanders, and who have also communicated to their OSPDs and the team at the ground, to also assist us in intercepting those type of people who are trading on that. So for them, let them know alongside the roadblocks, the police may also intercept and give information to us. Going on this as well, I need to note that there are also the wholesalers who exist, and they have wholesale warehouses that are not declared. And I'll repeat this because, again, we touched it last time, and this is also our focus, because these are also unauthorized warehouse that we need to check. So you have a wholesale setup, you declare a warehouse that you are trading in, but along the interior part of the area that you are trading, there is a warehouse that you have not declared. And these are risk warehouses because, again, I repeat, that these are areas that you can easily access medicines that are either not registered or products that are not properly regulated. Because of existing of the authorized warehouse, then we have an opportunity to ensure that they are actually licensed. So that one I'll note on that, and insist that in the case of a regulated person or regulated premises, again found to be practicing wrong things that they were not licensed to do, then the board has a very functional disciplinary structures that they will be committed to and put into sanctions that are prescribed in the law. I want to also note that we have issues touching on transporters, which is also part of our activity. Again, I said our activity this week is in two parameters: one, unlicensed, unauthorized wholesalers, and unlicensed vessels. So coming to unlicensed transportation vessels, I would want to touch fully that the rules and the guidelines are very, very well spread. They are properly affixed to law since 2022. In fact, for the guideline for transporters existing from 2019, we'll be doing some reviews, and all the parties that are participating in the transportation of pharmaceuticals have been put into the engagement. Nobody who doesn't know that these things exist. So the business of the inspectorate at the Pharmacy and Poisons Board is basically to enforce. And that's why now we are out to enforce these rules, the relevant laws and the guidelines. So we are only touching and saying, who are these transporters? These transporters, one, are the courier services. It is the responsibility of the owner of the product, and it is the responsibility of the owner of the courier services or the directors to ensure that their vessels are properly regulated by Pharmacy and Poisons Board. There is no application here about who regulate the vessel. Our vessels, the vessels that we are regulating, are the vessels that are taxed to transport the pharmaceuticals. So the responsibility of the owners of the courier services or any form of transportation of pharmaceuticals is to ensure that those vessels are registered or they are licensed. The responsibility of the owner of the product is to ensure that the product are transported by a licensed courier services. For example, I'll give an example of say, do you have nation couriers, isn't it? So it is the responsibility of the nation courier owners to ensure that the nation courier is licensed. It is also the responsibility of the people who are using the nation courier to ask for the license of their courier services. So we have two sanctions here. So it is not an issue that when we intercept your medicines, remember what are the exhibits that we use in court to prosecute these illegal transportation vessels? One is the vessel itself, is an exhibit. Secondly, is a product. Because you have to show that this vessel was transporting pharmaceuticals, isn't it? So the owner of the product will lose his products. The owner of the vessel will also lose his vessel because it's an exhibit. So what we are trying to say here now, the owner of this product must ensure that their product are safe through ensuring that the vessels that are transporting their product are well licensed by Farmers and Poisons Board to do that kind of a service. So these courier services, we know all of them. And then I'll come down now to the public transport system. Because the courier services are like G4S, the Fargo couriers, the postal system transportation, and all other transport system for this courier services. We have also noted, like, probably is it NT, the companies, is it Monoline? Monoline, the Nenosaco, they have also their courier services outside the public transport system. Their courier services are also supposed to be licensed. They are not exceptional from these other courier services that are being licensed. I also come to the public transport system that are also transporting medicines from one point to the other. You find that, for example, a matatu that is moving from Nairobi to Kakamega or Bungoma, sometimes they buy medicine, where people buy medicine from town, they load them in those matatus. The owner of those matatus should also know that it's a risk to transport medicines without the transporter's license. Remember, the transporter license is not only the license that we want them to have. The conformity of the vessel to transport the medicine is an issue in us. Okay? Because you cannot transport the vessel, for example, you cannot transport the medicine, for example, in an open, pickup in such hot areas where the medicine can easily get damaged through the intensive heat and all these kind of things. So we are trying to say those public transport vessels, they are also risking themselves to transport medicines, because at some point we intercept and look at it to check whether those vessels are licensed. We also have cross-border transport system. These include the buses. And as we are talking now, we have already, these things we have to tell them because it's not a secret. It does not mean that they cut off their transport system today because we are the crowd. Because this is a continuous exercise. So if they so wish, they can actually comply because that's the way to go. I will touch this cross-border transport system. What are these cross-border transport system? Of course, these are the buses. And I will again continue insisting, these are the buses that are on transit from our neighboring countries. I will look at the buses that are moving from Namanga to Kenya, or from Tanzania to Kenya through Namanga Bunda. There are those buses that are passing through Busia Malaba and also to Kenya, that is Uganda, Kenya. There are those buses that are moving from Moyale, Ethiopia to Kenya, and equally also those that are crossing Mandera through Liboyo, Mandera town to Kenya. Do they even know that these services that they are offering to transport pharmaceuticals is a regulated services? So we are again saying we have a team that we put along those border to work with the police along the border point to again intercept those buses and check whether they are actually transiting medicines, because it's also, those are actually a risk transport system that can also easily bring medicines that are being used in our neighboring countries to our country. So as soon as they come in, we are checking two things: whether these medicines are either registered to be sold in Kenya. They are also checking whether the vessel itself is is registered or is licensed. So our focus is towards those type of areas. Then I also look at the online deliveries. We have online deliveries like Bolt, motorbikes, or the Ubers themselves. You realize that people are delivering through those courier services or the online courier services without being licensed. That is also our focus, and I think for today, our brief purely enters into the illegal or unauthorized distributors, and equally the unlicensed transporters. And I think based on that, those are a few things I wanted to mention. But on a brief, I would request my colleague, Dr. Kilonzo, who is the head of Lower Eastern region, with me, to also put this message in our other language that people would understand.